The streets of King's Landing were hot and filled with tension. People moved quickly, whispering news that hung heavy in the air. Lord Eddard Stark, the traitor, was going to die. The bells hadn't rung yet, but the city already knew. Arya Stark heard it all, and her heart raced. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be on her way back to Winterfell with Yoren, hidden with the other boys. But when she overheard some gold cloaks talking about her father's execution, she slipped away. She didn't cry. Not now, not yet. Arya had learned to swallow her tears. She had Needle hidden under her clothes, tucked safely near her side. The Braavosi water dancer, Syrio Forel, had taught her more than just sword moves. He had taught her how to move like a shadow, how to listen, how to be brave. As she ran through the narrow alleys of Flea Bottom, she tried to remember the Red Keep's layout, the servant paths, the tunnels, the open doors where no one looked. She had lived in this cursed city long enough now, and she had watched enough to know how quickly people here change sides. Her boots slapped softly on the stone as she turned a corner and almost crashed into an old man selling apples. He shouted at her, but she didn't stop. She had to find a way to the Great Sept. That's where they would take her father. That's where it would happen. She reached the walls near the Sept just before noon. She was out of breath, covered in sweat and dust, but she didn't care. From where she stood, she could see the platform being built, the crowd starting to gather, and at the center, a block of wood and a sword. Ice, her father's own blade. The Lannisters were going to kill him with his own sword. Arya's stomach twisted. Every part of her wanted to scream, to run down there and fight them all. But Syrio's voice echoed in her mind. Calm, little cat. Calm as still water. She couldn't get close as herself. A little girl with northern eyes and a stark face would be stopped. But she knew what to do. She had stolen a cloak from a drunk stable boy. She pulled it over her head and mixed in with the kitchen hands entering from the side gate. No one looked twice. They were too busy preparing for the spectacle. As she crept inside, she clutched Needle. It felt small but solid in her hands. Her heart pounded. She didn't know what she was going to do. She only knew that she had to do something. She had to stop it. Up ahead, she saw a flash of golden hair. Joffrey. He was already at the Sept, sitting on the high platform with his smug little face, acting like a king. Sansa was there too, standing beside Queen Cersei, tears in her eyes, lips trembling. Arya felt a pang for her sister. Poor Sansa didn't know this was all a game. A cruel game played by lions and snakes. Then they brought Ned Stark out. Arya's breath caught in her throat. His face was bruised and pale, beard scruffy, his eyes tired but not broken. He looked out at the crowd, searching. Arya ducked back behind a pillar, tears finally rolling down her cheeks. He didn't see her. He wasn't supposed to. The High Septon started to speak, reading out the charges. Arya didn't hear a word. All she saw was the sword, ice, and Sir Elend Payne standing by it, hands resting on the hilt, face like stone. Joffrey stood and waved his hand. "Bring him forward." Arya moved closer, sticking to the shadows, getting as close as she could to the stage steps. She couldn't think straight. Her hands shook. Her father looked up again, and this time, just for a moment, his eyes flicked toward her. It was like he knew, she whispered under her breath. Not today. Then she made her move. Arya's feet moved before her mind could stop them. She rushed forward, keeping her head low, weaving between guards, nobles, and commoners who had crowded the Sept to watch a man die. Her heart was beating so hard it drowned out every sound around her. All she saw was her father kneeling before the block and the monstrous sword raised behind him. She knew she had only seconds. Hold. A voice shouted, but it wasn't hers. The crowd gasped. It was Sansa. The girl, trembling in her silk dress, had stepped forward, hands raised, eyes red. "Please, your grace," she cried to Joffrey, her voice breaking. "You promised mercy." Joffrey turned, clearly enjoying the moment. "I changed my mind." Arya didn't wait for the rest. That moment of distraction, it was the only opening she was going to get. She bolted forward, pushing through the legs of a large man, then jumped up the stone steps like a shadow. Nobody noticed the small cloaked figure until she was already at the platform. her fingers wrapped around the hilt of needle. Sir Ilyn Payne took half a step toward Ned, lifting ice, and that's when Arya lunged. Her blade slashed deep into his leg. Sir Ilyn roared in pain, staggering backward, the giant greatsword slipping from his grip and crashing down with a heavy thud on the stone. The sound silenced everything. People screamed. Guards surged forward, but Arya wasn't done. She threw herself at her father, cutting the ropes on his wrists with frantic hands. "Father, get up!" she gasped. "Come on, we have to run." Ned's eyes widened in shock.
"Arya, what?"
"No time, move!" But the Kingsguard were already closing in. Arya turned, needle raised, eyes wild like a cornered wolf. Jaime Lannister wasn't there. He was off in the Riverlands. But Sir Meryn Trant stepped forward, blade drawn, a cruel grin on his lips. "What's this? A little rat with a stick?" Arya slashed at him, but he caught her wrist and knocked her aside with the back of his hand. She hit the stone hard and cried out. Her head spun. "No!" Ned yelled, grabbing ice with both hands. The sword was too heavy. He could barely lift it, but his fury gave him strength. With a deep, broken cry, he swung the massive blade. It didn't cut, but it knocked Sir Meryn back a few feet, just enough to give them space, and that was when the chaos truly began. Yoren appeared from the edge of the crowd, his black cloak flowing behind him, a sword in hand. "Arya!" he shouted. "With me!" He had seen everything. A few of the crowd had begun to flee, and in the confusion Yoren charged forward, cutting down a guard who got in his way. He reached Arya, pulled her to her feet, and threw a dagger to Ned. "You want your daughter to live, Lord Stark. Then run like hell." Together, the three of them bolted toward the side stairs. Joffrey was screaming something, face red, pointing madly. "Stop them! Kill them all! Kill the traitor and his brat!" But the crowd had become a wave of panic. No one knew who was fighting who. The guards couldn't get through the chaos fast enough. Arya, Ned, and Yoren ran through the sept side doors, down a servant hallway Arya had discovered months ago. She led the way, even with blood trickling from her lip and bruises on her arm. All that mattered was getting away. Behind them, bells started to ring, alarms, not for a dead man, but for a Stark who had just escaped. They ducked into the stables, Arya slamming the doors shut as Yoren pulled down a beam to block it. Ned was wheezing, clearly in pain, but alive. Alive? Arya turned to him, eyes full of tears now. "I couldn't let them kill you." Ned looked at his daughter, the little wolf who had saved him from death. He reached out, pulled her close, and whispered, "You're your mother's heart, and your father's fire." But they weren't safe yet, not even close. From outside, voices shouted, boots pounded, and steel rang. The Lannisters would be on them within minutes. Yoren grabbed 2 horses. "We ride now, no waiting." Arya helped her father into the saddle, then jumped onto her own. Her hands shook, but she was steady. She had made a choice. No more hiding, no more running away from who she was. She was Arya Stark of Winterfell, and the game had changed. The horses galloped hard through the lower streets of King's Landing. The hooves clashed against cobblestone like thunder. Arya rode beside her father, her hands tight on the reins, her face set like stone. Behind them, Yoren kicked his horse faster, shouting directions. "Turn left here, down the butcher's path." Every heartbeat echoed in Arya's ears. The city wasn't just chasing them, it felt like it was swallowing them whole. Bells rang from towers. Lannister soldiers spilled into the streets, their red cloaks flowing like blood. People screamed and ran, carts overturned, dogs barked wildly, and everywhere, gold cloaks were searching for one man, Eddard Stark. "Block the gates," came a voice from behind. Arya looked back. A group of Lannister riders were closing in, fast. Yoren cursed under his breath. "We won't make it out the front." Ned was pale, his body swaying on the horse. He was bleeding. Arya saw the red patch growing on his side. She rode closer to him. "Father, stay with me," she said, voice trembling but firm. "I'm here, little wolf," he whispered, eyes half-lidded. "You did what I couldn't. You saved me." "Not yet," she said. "We're not safe yet." They veered into a narrow alley, mud flying up around them. The smell of rot and filth hit Arya's nose, but she didn't care. Behind them, the clanking of armor was getting closer. Suddenly, a man stepped into their path, a city watchguard, sword drawn. "Stop in the name of—" Yoren didn't even slow. He raised his axe and brought it down with a sickening crack. The man fell, screaming, blood pouring onto the stones. "Keep moving!" Yoren bellowed. Arya tried not to look back. They reached the edge of the city, near the old walls. Yoren pulled them into a crumbling building, a forgotten blacksmith shed long abandoned. He slammed the doors shut and barred them. Outside, the shouting grew louder. "We can't stay," Arya said, panting. "They'll find us." "Aye," Yoren nodded. "But we can't ride with your father like this. He'll fall off the horse before we cross the river." Arya turned to Ned. He had slumped sideways, clutching his ribs. Blood dripped from his mouth. "No," she whispered. "Please, not now." He smiled faintly, barely conscious. "I'm proud of you, Arya. Of both my daughters." She shook her head fiercely. "Don't say goodbye." "Not yet." Yoren knelt beside him, tearing cloth into bandages. "We need a healer. Quiet one. Someone I trust." His eyes narrowed. "There's a woman in the slums. Used to patch up cutthroats. If she's still breathing, she owes me." He tossed Arya a knife. "Stay by him. If they break the door down, you fight. You don't scream. You don't cry. You fight like you did today." "I will," she said. Her hands were already steady again. Yoren vanished out the back, into the maze of buildings. Arya sat beside her father, holding his hand. "We'll get out," she whispered. "We'll go north. Back to John, back to Rob, you'll see." Ned didn't answer. His eyes were closed. Arya felt the weight of it, the heavy truth. He was alive, but barely. Outside, boots stomped nearby. A voice called out, "They came this way." Arya tensed, clutching her knife, heart pounding. She looked around the small room. Broken tools, a pile of wood, a half-smashed furnace. If they got in, she wouldn't run. Not again. Suddenly a voice from the shadows startled her. "You're a brave little girl." Arya spun, knife raised, and saw a hooded figure leaning against the furnace. Thin face, sharp eyes, calm like still water. A coin spun between his fingers. "Who are you?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "A friend with many names. And I've been watching you." She narrowed her eyes. "Why?" "Because most little girls don't stab kingsmen in the leg and rescue traitors from the block." He tossed the coin to her. "If the time comes, show that to a Bravosi and speak the words." Arya caught it, confused. "What words?" "Valar Morgulis." Before she could ask anything more, he was gone. Yoren returned minutes later, breathless. "She'll see him. We've got one chance." They carried Ned between them, slipping through the back alleys as the hunt pressed harder. Arya held her father's weight, her arms aching, but she didn't stop. They were ghosts now, hunted by lions, but the wolf had drawn blood, and war was coming. They moved like shadows through the bowels of King's Landing. The city above roared with soldiers and steel, but down here, in the alleys behind the butcher shops, through collapsed stone tunnels and rat-infested drains, it was silent, almost dead. Arya gritted her teeth as she helped carry her father's weight. Yoren supported the other side. Ned's boots dragged, leaving a faint trail of blood behind them. If any Lannister hound found it, they'd be cornered. "This way," Yoren whispered, nodding toward a crooked door beneath a tavern. A dirty cloth hung over it, stained and buzzing with flies. The smell of old ale and vomit floated through the air. The healer lived here? Arya wasn't sure if this woman would save her father or finish the job. Yoren kicked the door twice. Then once more, the flap opened a crack, and a pair of suspicious green eyes stared out. "You owe me," Yoren said. The door creaked open. Inside, the room was dark, lit only by one candle sitting on a barrel. The healer was an older woman, thin as a bone, hair wrapped in a scarf, hands covered in ink and dried blood. She didn't ask names. She didn't care. One look at Ned, and she rolled her sleeves, put him on the table. "And if he dies, you clean it up." Arya stepped back, knife still in her hand. She didn't trust this woman. She didn't trust anyone, except Yoren, and her father, who barely breathed now. As the healer began to work, Arya paced near the window, peeking through the cracked shutters. She could hear shouting in the streets. The Lannisters barking orders. dragging people out of homes, demanding to know if anyone had seen a man with a grey beard and a girl with wolf eyes. "They'll search everywhere," she said. "They already are," Yoren replied. "We've got one night." "Then we ride." "Ride where?" Arya asked, voice sharp. Yoren met her eyes. "North. That's where your people are, and not all of them." Her voice dropped. "Sansa's still here." Yoren didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Arya sat near the table and watched the healer work. She poured some foul-smelling liquid over Ned's wound, and he groaned softly. The woman stitched fast, her fingers moving like spiders. "He'll live," she muttered. "But he won't ride far unless he rests." "We don't have time for rest," Arya said. The healer snorted. "Then prepare his grave." By nightfall, the city burned with torches. Lannister guards stormed through every alley, their voices growing louder. Somewhere near the harbour, a bell rang. That was no ordinary bell. That was the sound of a lockdown. No ships leaving, no gates opening. They were trying to trap the Starks inside the city like rats. Arya leaned against the wall, watching her father sleep. His breathing was slow but steady now. She reached out and took his hand again. "You have to wake up," she whispered. "I can't do this without you." His fingers twitched just slightly. Yoren stood watch by the door, sharpening his blade. "I've got a cart waiting near the tanner's yard, covered in pig skins. Smells like death. No one will check." Arya wrinkled her nose. "Perfect. We'll smuggle him out before dawn. Ride straight to the river. If the gods are kind, we'll vanish before they know we're gone." "The gods aren't kind," Arya muttered. "Not in this city." Outside, a sudden knock made all three freeze. The healer snuffed out the candle. Darkness swallowed the room. Another knock, then a voice, smooth, mocking, and all too familiar. "Yoren, I know you're in there." Arya's blood ran cold. It was Petter Baelish. Littlefinger. Yoren slowly approached the door. "What do you want?" "I want to talk," Littlefinger replied. "Man to man. You're hiding a very valuable man in there. And his daughter. The Queen wants them both. Does she now?" "She's willing to be generous for once. Give them up now. And maybe we don't put your head on a spike next to theirs." Yoren gripped his sword tighter. "You always talk too much, Baelish." Arya stepped up beside him, needle in her hand, eyes fierce. Littlefinger laughed softly behind the door. "Ah, the little wolf. Still snarling, I see." Arya didn't answer. Then she said something that even surprised herself. "Tell Cersei the wolf didn't die today." There was silence. Then footsteps. Walking away, for now, Arya turned to Yoren. "We ride before dawn, even if we have to carry him." Yoren looked at her like she wasn't a child at all. She wasn't, not anymore. Before the sun even touched the sky, the city still cloaked in cold fog, Arya was already awake. Her bones ached from the stone floor. Her clothes stank of blood and sweat, but she didn't care. She stood beside her father, watching his chest rise and fall. He was alive. That was all that mattered. Yoren opened the door slowly, letting in a gust of morning chill. "Cart's ready. We move now." No delays. Arya helped Yoren lift Ned into the wooden cart, his body hidden beneath filthy pigskins. The healer watched from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes tired but curious. "You're lucky," she muttered. "No one gets out of this city once Cersei's got your scent." Arya stared back, her voice calm. "Then we'll be the first." She climbed up beside Yoren, pulling her hood low over her face. The cart creaked as it rolled through the back streets of the slums, flies buzzing around the stinking pile in the back. No one looked twice. People avoided carts like this. King's Landing was waking. Fires were being stoked, whores being chased out of alleyways, and drunks dragged from gutters. Gold cloaks were posted at nearly every corner, and their banners snapped in the wind. The lion roaring proudly, blood red against gold. But they didn't notice them, not yet. Yoren guided the cart past a checkpoint near Cobbler's Square. Two guards stood lazily beside a barrel fire, their eyes half shut. Arya's fingers twitched near Needle's hilt. Her heart thudded. Yoren didn't slow. He spit on the ground, cursed loudly, and shouted, "Rotten meat for the river! Move aside unless you want the stink on your boots." One of the guards waved him through without looking. They were past. Arya let out a slow breath. Her hands were shaking now, but she kept them under control. She glanced back at the pile. Her father hadn't moved. Good. Stay still. They reached the stables near the mud gate, where two tired horses waited beside a small barge tied to the riverbank. Fog rolled off the water like ghosts. Joran jumped down and pulled the cart close to the boat. "We've got maybe 15 minutes before the next patrol walks through," he said. Arya climbed down and helped slide Ned from the cart into the boat. He groaned softly and Arya shushed him. "We're almost there, father. Just hold on a little longer." But then a shout rang out. "Hey! You there!" Arya turned. A patrol, 4 Lannister guards, was coming toward them. Joran's face darkened. "Get in the boat," he whispered. Arya didn't move. "Not without you." "Don't argue," he growled. "I'll draw them off. You get your father across the river. There's a road beyond the reeds. You ride north. Don't stop. Don't look back." The guards were closer now. One of them had drawn his sword. Arya grabbed the rope, pushed the boat away from the dock, water sloshing against its side. She looked at Joran one last time. He gave her a nod, then turned, sword in hand, walking straight toward the soldiers like a madman. "Rotten pigs. All of you," he bellowed. "You're looking for traitors. Look in the damn mirror." The guards shouted. One charged forward. Arya turned away. Just as the swords clashed, she couldn't look. She had no time for tears. She pushed the boat with the oar, guiding it into the middle of the river. The fog swallowed them whole. Ned groaned again, shifting slightly. Arya reached out, brushing his hair from his face. "We made it, father. We're out." But her voice cracked, because she wasn't sure if he could hear her anymore. Once they were far enough, she tied the horses to the boat's side and climbed in with him, cradling his head in her lap. The city faded behind them, the tall walls disappearing into mist. She saw nothing but water, heard nothing but her own heartbeat. Then a bird call broke the silence, a raven, flying west. She watched it disappear, and she swore to herself she would never be caged again. Back in King's Landing, Cersei stood in the throne room, fingers clenched around the raven scroll just handed to her. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "So, the wolf lives," she looked to her guards. "Send riders. I want them hunted like animals. I want their heads." And somewhere in the shadows, Littlefinger whispered to himself, "The game just changed." The road north was long, quiet, and dangerous. After crossing the river, Arya had ridden for 3 days straight, stopping only to rest the horses or hide from the Lannister scouts that now roamed the countryside like starving dogs. She slept with one eye open and her hand on needle. She hunted rabbits, stole apples, drank from muddy streams. She was no longer the little girl who played in Winterfell's courtyards. Her father lay in the back of the cart, wrapped in furs, half-conscious most days. Fever came and went. The mornings he would wake and whisper her name. Other times he muttered about Brandon, about Jon Snow, about their mother. She listened to everything, even the words that made no sense. Joran was gone. She didn't know if he had escaped or died in that alley near the river. But his sacrifice had bought them time that was running out. The gold cloaks were growing bolder now. Arya had seen a patrol just the day before, a rider dragging a bloody sack behind him, a stark banner torn and tied around his arm. They were sending a message. Arya wasn't afraid. Not anymore. But she was angry, and she had no idea what to do next. They reached a small village near the edge of the riverlands. It looked abandoned. Roofs collapsed, chickens running wild, and windows boarded shut. Arya pushed the cart into the center and stopped near a dry well. She needed food. She also needed help, but asking for it could mean death. As she climbed down from the cart, she heard a whistle, short, sharp. Her hand flew to her blade. From the shadows of the ruined inn, 3 men stepped out. One was tall, with a scar down his jaw. The second had a crooked nose and a lazy eye. The third, shorter, had greasy black hair and a smirk that never left his face. "Well, what's this?" the tall one said. "A little girl with a wagon full of secrets." Arya stood her ground. "Keep walking," the men laughed. "Or what?" The smirking one asked. "You'll stab us with that toothpick?" Arya didn't answer. She moved fast, Needle flashed, and in one motion she drew blood. A red line opened across the smirker's forearm. He screamed and stumbled back. The others drew blades, but then a voice broke through the air. "Enough, everyone!" Froze. A fourth figure stepped out from the stables. A woman, tall, wrapped in a grey cloak, her face marked by a long scar over her left cheek. She walked like a soldier and looked like she'd killed more men than the plague. "She's not yours to touch," the woman said. The tall man lowered his blade. "Who says?" "I do." The woman stepped closer, and Arya saw something in her belt. A pin. The mockingbird pin of House Tully. "I'm from the north," Arya said quickly. "We don't want trouble." The woman nodded slowly. "And your father?" Arya hesitated, but something in the woman's eyes, cold but not cruel, made her speak. "Eddard Stark." The three men tensed. Even the cocky one stopped smirking. "Impossible," the tall one said. "He's dead." Arya's voice hardened. "No, he's not." The woman stepped to the cart and pulled the furs back. She looked at Ned for a long time. Then she turned to the others. "Get back to the woods, now. No one speaks of this." "But—" the tall one started. "Now." They vanished into the trees without another word. The woman turned to Arya. "Name's Sira. I fought for your uncle, Hoster Tully, then for Robb when he rose. I know the wolf when I see one." Arya's jaw tightened. "I need to reach the twins. From there I can head north." "Not safe," Sira said. "The Freys are licking gold from the Queen's table now. You'll be dead before the gate opens." Arya clenched her fists. "Then tell me where to go." Sira looked around, then back at Arya with a sharp nod. "Come, there's a maester hidden in a cave nearby. He served the blackfish once. He'll help your father." Arya hesitated, then nodded. They moved again before dusk, deeper into the woods, along a deer trail no Lannister would bother to follow. The silence of the forest felt heavier now, like the trees themselves were watching. As the stars blinked into the night sky, Arya looked down at her father again. His eyes fluttered open for a second. He smiled weakly. "You're like your mother when she was young?" Arya brushed the hair from his forehead. "She'd have burned the whole city to save you," she whispered. Ned closed his eyes. Again, but Arya didn't look away. She was her mother's rage, her father's stubborn fire, and no lion would take that from her. The cave was nothing more than a hollow between two moss-covered stones, tucked into the roots of an ancient tree. But inside it felt like a world of its own, silent, dark, and strangely safe. The forest muffled the sounds of the world beyond, and in that space, time slowed. The Maester was an old man with milky eyes and hands that trembled, but his mind was still sharp. His ravens perched silently above him, watching everything. On white as snow, the other pitch black. They didn't speak, but their eyes never left Arya. She didn't trust them. "He's burning," the Maester said, touching Ned's forehead. "Too long on the road. Too much blood lost. Can you save him?" Arya asked, her voice thin but steady. The Maester looked at her for a long time, like he was studying something rare. "I can try, but you must keep him calm. The fever dreams may call names from the dead. He may not know where he is. He'll know me," she said. "He always knows me." Sira stood at the mouth of the cave, sword drawn, watching the tree line. "They'll come," she muttered. "Maybe not today, but soon," Arya nodded. She could feel it too. The danger was crawling closer like a slow-moving fire. Ever since the escape from King's Landing, she'd sensed the Lannisters breathing down her neck. Cersei wouldn't stop, not until she had her father's head and hers beside it. But they had something now the Queen didn't. Hope. That night, Arya sat beside her father while the Maester worked. He mixed herbs, wrapped wounds, whispered to himself in an old tongue. Ned twitched, muttering in his sleep. "Lyanna, I told them no." Arya looked at the Maester. "What's he saying?" The old man stirred the herbs. "Ghosts. He's dreaming of a promise." Arya leaned closer. Her father's hand gripped hers tightly. "Protect them. Not just Jon. Not just Jon." She frowned. "Jon?" Her heart squeezed. "He's my brother." "Is he in danger?" But Ned fell silent again, sinking into sleep. The fire crackled softly, but Arya felt a chill. She stepped outside. The forest was dark. the moon barely a sliver above the trees. Arya stood at watch, her blade resting on her shoulder. "You're not a child anymore," the warrior woman said without turning. "But you're not a killer yet either." Arya's jaw tightened. "I've killed. Once, maybe twice." Panic kills. But a true killer chooses, waits, learns. Arya looked down at needle in her hand. "I don't want to kill for fun." Syra turned now, her face half lit by firelight. "Good, don't, because once you start killing with joy in your heart, it never leaves you." Arya nodded slowly. She was learning that lesson faster than she wanted. Syra took a breath, scanning the shadows. "Word came from the north. Your brother Rob, he's gathered his bannermen. They're marching south." Arya's eyes widened. "He's coming for us?" "No," Syra said. "He thinks you're both dead." Arya's chest tightened. "Then what's he marching for?" "To start a war." The words echoed in the trees. War. Arya's first thought was of her mother. Wherever Catelyn was, she'd be fighting like hell to keep her family alive. She would have burned down the twins, torn apart the veil, and spit in Cersei's face to get her daughters back. And Rob, young as he was now a wolf with teeth. Arya clenched her fists. Maybe he'd burn the world for her too. "I need to reach him," she said. "If he knows father's alive, everything changes." Syra raised an eyebrow. "And how do you plan to cross half the realm with Lannister scouts hunting your scent?" Arya's voice turned cold. "The way I crossed the last half, quietly, smart, and without mercy." Syra chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You're starting to sound like your father." Good. The next morning, the Maester confirmed what Arya had prayed for. Ned would survive. Weak but alive, they couldn't wait any longer. By midday, Arya and Syra packed the cart again. The Maester gave her a small satchel with maps, salves, and a single iron coin. It looked old and unremarkable. He pressed it into her palm. "If you're ever lost and the world closes in, show that to the right person. And say the words." Arya looked at him. "Vala Morgulis," he whispered. She nodded slowly. "Vala Doheris," she replied, the words tasting foreign on her tongue, and as they disappeared into the trees once again, with Ned barely holding on, Arya felt something shift inside her. Not just rage, not just grief, but something colder, something sharper. The little wolf was fading, and in her place a shadow with a name, Arya Stark of Winterfell. The north was colder than Arya remembered, not in the air, but in the silence. The kind of silence that only comes when war is near. Forests once filled with birds and wind were now empty. Every snapping twig made her reach for her sword. Every shadow might have been a Lannister scout. But they were close now, closer than ever to home. Ned was still alive, riding weakly in the cart, wrapped in furs. He'd begun to speak more clearly, asking questions, trying to sit up. He didn't know all that had happened. Arya hadn't told him, not yet. Not about Yoren, not about Littlefinger, not about how close the sword had come to his neck. She wanted him to rest, to recover. There would be time for the truth later. Maybe. Syra scouted ahead most days, fast and silent like a cat in steel. Arya followed behind with the horses, cart creaking across frozen paths. They'd been traveling by night now, using old deer trails and forgotten smuggler roads. The Lannister patrols had pushed north, past the Trident, burning small villages and executing suspected Stark loyalists. But none had caught Arya. They wouldn't, not now. She'd learned how to vanish. One night, as they reached a river fork near the neck, Syra came riding back fast. Her face set. "There's movement near Moat Cailin," she said. "Stark banners," Arya's breath caught. "Rob," Syra nodded. "And half the north behind him. He's setting up for a march. He's going south." Arya looked down at her father, still sleeping, pale under the fur. She felt her chest tighten. "We can't miss him." They pushed harder the next day, through the bogs, past the old stones, until finally, on a hill above the neck, Arya saw it. The Stark encampment. Tents lined the hills, fires crackling, the grey direwolf sigil flying high on the banners. The wolf had truly risen, and then she saw him, Rob. No longer a boy, but not yet a man. Sword on his hip, a leather cloak draped over his shoulders. The northern lords walked behind him, whispering, waiting for orders. But Rob stood still, staring into the distance. Arya left the cart and ran. Guards called out, but she didn't stop. She broke through the line, dirt on her face, hair wild, eyes fierce. "Rob!" He turned, and when he saw her, the breath left his chest. He stared for a moment, frozen in place, before rushing forward and catching her in his arms. "Arya," his voice cracked. "They told us. You were gone." "I'm not," she whispered into his chest. "And neither is father." Rob froze again. "What?" She pulled back, eyes shining. "He's with us. He's alive." She led him to the cart, where Ned sat propped against the side, eyes half open but alert. When he saw Rob, his lips curled into a faint smile. "Rob," he rasped. Rob dropped to his knees. "Father." Arya stepped back and let the moment pass between them. A family thought lost, now whole again. But only for now. The lords gathered in silence. Whispers spread through the camp like wildfire. The young wolf's father was alive, and that changed everything. That night, Arya stood by the fire, watching as the plans changed. The war council bent around Ned's presence like a storm shifting course. What had been a march for revenge had now become something else, a rescue of the realm, led by the one man who had once tried to save it the right way. But Arya knew something they didn't. The game had changed, and so had she. Later, her father called for her. She sat by his side in the tent. "I owe you everything," he said softly. "But what you did, no child should have to." "I'm not a child anymore," Arya said. Ned looked at her then, not as a father, but as a man who had seen too many battles. "No, you're not." She pulled something from her pocket. The iron coin the maester had given her. "I've been learning," she said. "Not just how to run, how to fight, how to survive." Ned stared at the coin. "And where will that road take you?" Arya looked out at the night, the stars cold and sharp above the trees. "I don't know yet, but I'm not done." A pause. "When this war ends, I want to go where the killing started. King's Landing. I want to look them in the eyes." Ned closed his eyes. "Promise me you won't become what they are." Arya stood. "I promise I'll never be weak." And she meant it, because while the north was rising and the lions roared from their golden den, Arya Stark had already begun to walk a darker road, not for vengeance, not even for justice, but because she knew now what the world really was. And next time, when the sword came down, she wouldn't wait to stop it. She'd be the one swinging it.